teachers, classroom teachers, to have their salaries doubled, is the one thing. Now the second thing is, I would also want teachers to reapply for their jobs every 5 years. And the benefits of this isn't just for the education of the children, it's also to send a very positive message to the UK, to entice a lot of families over here who want to invest in their children. And I think overall, it would have a huge benefit to the island. I'd like to know your views.
I don't think teachers would actually want a doubling of their salaries necessarily. I think what they would like is about 30%, which would restore them to where they would be if they had received inflation-linked pay rises over the last period of time since they'd had inflation-linked pay rises. I think what most teachers would prefer is to see an uplift in their salaries and to see the rest of the investment going into schools and improving education for the learners. I think your idea about having to reapply for your job every 5 years, we effectively do that every year because teachers on the Isle of Man are put through the appraisal process every year. That appraisal process is an extremely negative experience because there are no potential benefits to it. All it can do is prevent you from rising up the pay scale, from having a recommendation to rise up the pay scale. It cannot give you any performance-related uplift at all. There's no mechanism for that whatsoever. We also have never had advanced skills teachers on the Isle of Man, which they have had in the UK. So there are a number of reasons why teachers in the Isle of Man are treated detrimentally compared to UK teachers. Maternity and paternity rights are not as good in the Isle of Man as well, and compared to some of the other jurisdictions like Northern Ireland, for example, there's no opportunity for sabbaticals. There used to be an opportunity for a sabbatical, but there isn't any longer. So I think teachers, the adversarial approach from the government was very much in projecting the dispute between the unions and the government as a pay dispute. It most certainly wasn't. It was a dispute about pay amongst a whole range of other issues relating to conditions and recruitment and retention and the pensions issue, as the teachers' pension was largely seen by the public as lumped in with public sector. So I think what we would like to see is, investment in teachers and giving them a reasonable pay rise so that they have not been treated detrimentally as they clearly have been previously, but to see major investment into education, and that would attract people from the UK. Our examination results compare very, very favourably with the UK if you look at GCSE and A-level results, and there are centres of excellence, particularly for A-level across the island, and UCM also has fantastic creative industries.
Thank you for your response. Turn now to Pete.
I think if any job that you spent a lot of time and effort and then they told it was only going to last 5 years, you'd find it very difficult for a bank to give you a mortgage. It'd be very insecure employment. That was the question, isn't it? Apply for the jobs every 5 years. I think that could be quite damaging to the profession. Teachers are assessed every year anyway, as students. So, like in most jobs, if you're not very good at your job, maybe it's the assessment situation that should maybe change. I don't know. As for salaries doubling, I think I can understand the 30% inflation, that's necessary. But I think sometimes we keep talking about the living wage have to go up, the minimum wage have to go up, the inflation going up. Government have a lot more control over inflation on the Isle of Man than they do in many areas. We're a closed environment. We can control our housing costs. We can control our costs of travel, and freight, etc. They don't seem to do that, and I think we should be trying to drive inflation down so that teachers' pay is actually worth something. It isn't being eroded by inflation. So, no, I disagree with the changing jobs every 5 years. I agree with regular assessments.
Thank you very much. And over to Michael.
Thanks. So the question there about pay, look, I think the problems that face us as a learning community is not just about money, and money is important, and that's why I disagree with this government's decision to cut pay budgets for workers in education earlier this year. 23 out of 24 members of the House of Keys said aye when they voted in favour of cutting the pay budgets this year, by 1%. And I disagreed strongly with that at the time. I disagree strongly with that today. And so what we've got to do going forward is, first of all, stop cutting the pay budgets of essential workers at times when inflation is high to begin with. And so in that sense, I'd love to pay for teachers more. I think they're going to be great. But when I speak to the teachers on the doorstep, the things that they tell me is that money is important to a certain extent, is important more than anything else is to be treated with respect, to be treated with dignity, and to be valued for the work that they're doing. And so I think there is a degree of opportunity to pay staff more, but I'd like to see, if we had some imaginary bucket of funding, I'd like to see increased support for students with special educational needs, because they are, many students who are outside the mainstream are falling off the conveyor belt. We essentially, what is the schooling system here in 2020 in the Isle of Man is people going to boxes and we've got to get out of that. We've got to recognise there's a great deal of variety in our students, and so in the imaginary bucket of money, I'd much rather give that to support students with unusual and special needs.
Thank you, Michael. And just pass over now to Jodie.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. Thank you for raising it. I mean, I think the idea of raising teachers' pay is a good one, but it has to be done really, because the cost of living on the Isle of Man is akin to London, and we're paying teachers basically North West of England salaries, so that just doesn't really tie up. I'm not sure about doubling their salary. I would imagine that most teachers, certainly myself, would like to see that money put into actually investment in education overall, to boost the tick boxes, I guess, that the NAHT have brought up in their own manifesto in terms of well-being both of staff and of children, and the retention of staff. And as for the idea of them reapplying for their job every 5 years, well, I mean, I can obviously see where you're coming from with that, but I don't think that it would provide the teacher security that we need. What we do need to be doing is making our teaching profession a more attractive workforce to be part of, and I don't think that actually forcing them to reapply every 5 years for their role that they've been sitting in would do that really. So thank you.